be executing things in a proper way and pace it, it is also equally important to be aware about all the avenues, choices, and possibilities before taking a leap. On these lines today, we bring to you Mr. Vamsi Reddy. Sir graduated as a part of class of 2018 from NIT Rourkela with a BTech honors degree in Biomedical Engineering. Further, Sir graduated from Johns Hopkins University with a Master's in Engineering in Biomedical Engineering in class of 2021. And Sir, in his repertoire, has combined expertise in medical device development, physiological research, and health sensing technologies for the past 5 years, and have designed interfaces, developed prototypes, and executed longitudinal user studies for biomedical devices for a variety of physiological research. As a principal research and development engineer and head of product development at Evon Medics LLC USA, he calls the shots in the refinement and development of medical solutions, medical devices, and equipment to increase the product pipeline and ensure commercialization of these products. While there is a lot of first episodes, endless list of accomplishments. While here, Sir was the co-founder of our class, the official public speaking club of NIT Rourkela, and also served as a president during the academic year 2016-17. He was the founder president of Toastmasters International Chapter 2016-17 and served as an area club growth director 2017-18 under District 41 of Toastmasters International India. Additionally, he also served as a vice president 2016-17 of Plug_in, the official electronics club of NIT Rourkela, as many of you might be knowing. Hence, I warmly welcome you, sir, to share your story and insights with us and empower us with facts that have the potential to chart our careers ahead.
Thank you, Esther, for that lovely introduction. I think before I do start, I have a request to all of you who's ever on the call. I wanted to make this as interactive as possible, instead of just a talk. So I request, to whoever has a possibility to turn on your videos and interact with me. I think the first thing I'd like to tell all of you today is please be not obliged to wait until the end of the session to ask a question. Feel free to stop me at any given point and make sure that you be the pioneer for the curiosity that you may have. It is probably in many people's mind, the same question that you think is boggling you. So let's start with that. I think as a starter, I turn my video on and I request all of you to do the same so that I feel lively than just talking to different boxes on screen. All right, let me get started with sharing the video. Is everyone seeing my screen?
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, thank you. All right, today we're going to talk about biomedical engineering beyond India. I believe most of you are from, our department, and we have a lot of people who are biomedical enthusiasts and research experts. So, typically when we are talking about invited sessions, it's usually 200 slides long and the speaker is going to bore you with loads and loads of information. But I want all of you to know that I'm here with only 7 slides, out of which this is the title card, and I have a thank you note and a question and answer card. So we shall cover biomedical engineering beyond India in just 4 slides. I'll try to make it as interesting and entertaining as possible for you to acknowledge the various things about biomedical engineering that we often chose to neglect. So I'm sure that most of you don't want to hear it from a person who has no correlation or a cross interaction with most of you. So I'll give you a quick background on who am I and what did I do before taking up my job at Yvonne Medics. So my name is Vamsi Reddy. I work as a principal R&D engineer and head of product development at Yvonne Medics. We are a small company that promotes mental well-being using neuromodulation devices. And prior to that, as most of you are doing right now, I had my bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering. And currently, I serve as a Yvonne Medics. And prior to that, I also had an opportunity to do my master's at at the Johns Hopkins University. Like Dr. Kunal Palm is mentioning today in the session start, I had so many fears when I started this program. I accidentally got into biomedical engineering. This was not out of my choosing, but eventually, when I started realizing that the true potential of this field of engineering, I've started doing multiple internships at different locations, and it eventually opened up my research curiosity. I've published a couple of papers. And finally, I think my NIT life has started with signing my form at Kunal sir's table, and it has continued to be the same because I did my undergraduation dissertation project also under Dr. Kunal Pal. Eventually, it turned out to be a book chapter, which actually, is one of my major credible attributes when somebody talks about my profile. So, amidst all the chaos that we go through as a student, I think a few research accomplishments and more than that, the professional skill development that we do in terms of communication and leadership, I think is the reason that I chair a position like head of product development in a company. So beyond just technical excellence, it is always the curbing of different skills, both soft and technical, that has provided me a way to establish my career on the top of my academic curiosity. And I know I said I won't bore you, so let's go ahead. About the topic. What is biomedical engineering, and how is it happening outside of India, and what are the restrictions that we do have? Does it have boundaries, and a lot of other questions that million people have been questioning themselves or trying to search and browse through internet. So, what is biomedical engineering? I know it sounds like a two-mark question in one of your midterms, but the definition of any field of engineering has a lot of virtue, because that will tell you where you should search for your opportunities and what are the platforms that you could use to reach out to different avenues in that field. So traditionally, biomedical engineering have been identified and defined as an application of engineering tools in the fields of biology and healthcare. But over the decades, it has evolved to a point where biomedical engineering is devoted to focus on the advances in health and healthcare. So when we're talking about human healthcare, there are only quite of a possibilities. Either you could design a life-saving device or a life-enhancing device. To my understanding and to my experience in medical device development, almost every single device, whether diagnostic or therapeutic, can be broadly classified into either a life-saving device or a life-enhancing device. So the biggest question that most of you might wonder is, what kind of devices are actually being classified as a biomedical engineering device? Or does all biomedical engineering devices are medical devices, or do we have an exception to it? So let's talk about a few devices that are generally considered and regarded as biomedical engineering. So firstly, prosthetics. You might have seen a lot of movies, like American movies where you see robots, holding on doing different things. It could be, like an Iron Man's hand or a Terminator's hand. But prosthetics is a beautiful invention. If ever a person loses one of his limbs and loses the contact to make a normal human hand movement or a leg movement, then prosthetics are actually giving an assisted service to them as a life enhancing product. So in prosthetics, the interesting element is we use our own body's residual myoelectric potentials to control the prosthetic hand and try to give it a human touch. And I've had an opportunity to work then with Dr. Thakur and the Applied Physics Laboratory at Johns Hopkins University, where we tried, developing a new method to capture the electromyography signals. The traditional industry standards are just metal pins that comes in conformity to your skin on your residual limb to control the prosthetics. And these are called upper limb myoelectric prostheses, which are worn on your upper limb in a transradial surface. But what we tried is we wanted to replace that industry standard of metal pins, like in a circle, and wanted to introduce carbon nanotubes. I am sure most of you have heard about it. So this material is one of the most gravitating materials in the areas of research, especially with material science and biomedical engineering. So we wanted to visualize an entire muscle. Although it's residual, it still has the same potential as much as the human hand would generally do in a healthy conditions. So prosthetics are an evolving field, and there has been a lot of research going on, in accordance with robotics and algorithm development using data science and other sort of machine learning approaches. Moving forward, I guess the first and foremost, these are the parent devices that has been defined into biomedical engineering. We see, in our lives, we see a lot of surgical devices. It could be used as a clinical tools. Sometimes those are just, some sort of a catheters that assist for implanting devices. I think we are in the generation of nano implantable devices. We have the pacemaker as small as a coin in our hands. All of this is possible when you have elite surgical devices that can ensure the safety and efficacy of patients lying on the hospital beds, especially in the surgery theaters. Now, when we talk about surgical devices, the world has been advancing a far more than what we know. In Hopkins alone, we have a device called Vamsi, which is a computer-aided surgery device where the doctor actually stays quite away from the surgery table and performs the entire surgery using robotic hands. So these are some sort of innovations that happening around with surgical devices. I'm sure India is very keen on this market, and many companies across the globe are trying to explore India and other sort of third tier countries to establish their surgical innovations as a market. And moving forward, I think we have just surpassed the biggest pandemic that we know in our generation. I think vital sign monitors has kept most people alive, and I'm sure that when we look at vital sign monitors, the most basic and the most rudimentary device that all of us have been accustomed to use as the pulse oximeters, which are used for oxygen saturation results and some sort of heart rates. And we're also living in the generation of smart wearables where we talk about heart rates, ECG at hand, and a lot of other things. And vital sign monitor has nevertheless the top priority in terms of medical devices, because it is both ideal for a clinical setting and as well as a domestic home use. So moving forward, we also have imaging methods. I'm sure most of you, have taken X-rays in your life. At some sort of a point, we have seen people going through certain scannings using CT scan, MRI, functional MRI, nuclear magnetic resonance imaging, optical coherence tomography. So the world has endless, developments in terms of the dimensions of photography, in terms of dimensions of imaging techniques. We have evolved 4D NMRs to even visualize the protein structures at a much more molecular and tissue level interfaces. I think when we talk about these sort of devices, we are not only talking the development of these devices externally in terms of hardware, but there has been enormous amounts of efforts being put into the development of the algorithms for the way the devices are functioning the way they are doing right now. And moving forward, we have therapeutics. In my personal opinion, a lot of aspirants have a misconception about what's being regarded as a therapeutic device. Generally, the moment we say therapeutics, it's a possibility that we assume that it's mostly the rehabilitation devices that account for it. But ideally, it's just not alone the rehabilitation devices. There are a lot of devices that serves during your recovery period. For example, at Yvonne Medics, we develop olfactory training based odorant devices, which means we use different odorants for the patient to inhale. so that their different sorts of neurogenerative activities can be triggered. These are clinically correlated, and we have two successful phases of clinical trial, and we have a great pipeline of products coming in, and all of them are actually regarded as therapeutics. So after that, we also have implanted devices. I think most of us, the moment we look at biomedical engineering, especially from a layman point of view, from a third person front, implanted devices are actually the true devices that they believe are biomedical engineering, because implanted devices are a beautiful innovation. Starting from a very minor pacemaker or defibrillator that we try to introduce and implant inside or near the heart, we have the most complicated 3D printing artificial organs that are serving and creating a reliving hope for many people whose organs has been extensively damaged in their life cycle. And we also have lab on chip. I think at our times we used to have Indranil Banerjee, a professor at NIT, who used to teach us a lot about lab on chip and the kind of immunotechnological devices that should come up. But the world hasn't really acknowledged the true potential of this until the last few years. But I guess COVID has really shown up what lab on chips are capable of. Today, when you see 500 samples being analyzed at a single stretch, that's not really possible with the traditional chemical testing that we have. It's only possible with lab on chips and all the diagnostic devices that are being developed on lab on chips. So these are the micro devices that has the potential to analyze hundreds and thousands of samples at a time, with the sample size a lot less than what we do on a traditional lab diagnostic devices. And finally, with all the different categories that we talked about in life saving and life enhancing, the most relatable and the most useful, in fact, the most attractive devices that we could talk about is the wearables. Today, I guess every single one of us has some sort of an interaction, either with smart watches, smart wearables for different sorts of purposes, to make sure that we have a proper physiological monitoring, well established in our life cycles, in our daily routine. I have to pause here for a moment and request Dr. Bala to admit. I think a lot of people are waiting in the
Yes,
lobby.
yes.
Get in.
I have admitted everyone, I think. No one is
I
there.
think, yeah, sure. Okay,
Thank
moving
you.
forward, I think now that we know what is biomedical engineering and what categories of devices actually fall into this life-saving and life-enhancing. Now the biggest question is, how do we classify all of these? We know that all of these are devices, but is there a way that we can actually define more of it? Are there anything apart from devices that we do in biomedical engineering? And there are plenty of them. And let's talk about the focus areas that we have internally inside of biomedical engineering. So generally in India, like our department, we have biomedical engineering and biotechnology engineering coexisting, in as a partner, as strategic partners. We have a lot of intervention, strategically that we do to design devices for biomedical engineering using biotechnological approaches, and we have a lot of immunotechnology devices that are being used with, designed with the principles of biotechnology and the tools of engineering in it. So this is quite confusing. The moment you step outside of India, the convention actually changes. We have a lot of established focus areas that are widely recognized, and now that we are talking about the global perspective on biomedical engineering, there has been a new convention, and there has been a lot of update and upgrades to the traditional focus areas that we talk about. In general, in India, we talk about material sciences as a whole, and then we talk about biomechanics and then biomedical instrumentation. But beyond this, I think the development of focus areas has been quite slow, and I'm sure it's going to evolve when the industry develops in India. But as of now, the contrast has been very broad, and it has been divided only into the major sections like instrumentation, mechanics, and material sciences. But beyond that, let me tell you that we have so many focus areas like you screen on screen. AI in medicine is one of the most developing focus areas, irrespective of whatever field of engineering we use. So, and especially the reliance on these methods of artificial intelligence to guide patient care will not only transform the medicine, but it will help you train the physicians in a way that we never can imagine, and it will help approach each patient in a way that's been most successful across the globe with the kind of patient data patterns that we could establish. This sort of advanced trainings needed to think critically about the topics in data science will help all of you, especially the students on this talk today, to build their careers in research and development, and establish the prime focus on AI in biomedical engineering. And following the footsteps, we also have biomedical data science, which has been quite attentive on biomedical engineering enthusiast section. It has been in picture for the last 5 6 years in almost all masters and PhD programs across the globe. Biomedical data science, is where you use data science approaches, and it gives a unique opportunity to understand how massive biomedical data sets are best analyzed to discover the knowledge about the function of a living system. The general computational capacities have been overwhelmed, trying to understand how human body actually functions. We are a great network of different living systems. So data science is actually giving a way for us to represent that and recreate that sort of a complicated human system in mathematical models and trying to understand what they do as a function. And going next, since we talked about data science and how it helps in computation, we have an exclusive field called biomedical medicine, which is also an emerging discipline that exclusively devotes to the development of quantitative approaches for understanding the mechanisms, diagnosis, and treatment of human disease through applications of mathematics, engineering, and computational science. And for all of these three, the AI in medicine, biomedical data science, and computational medicines, every enthusiast or a person who wish to establish their career in those are expected to come with a lot of programming ability. These are extensive programming based courses and fields. You need to have a lot of understanding of how programming works. And to my understanding, if you come with a bachelor's degree in India and wanted to try masters or PhD in either of these domains, it's essential that you be adept at programming abilities, because you will be competing with a lot of students who has a background from computer science who are traditionally trained to do programming. So my advice to all the students in here is, irrespective of whatever choice of focus areas that you wanted to do in biomedical engineering, I advise you to be skillful in programming, because that's going to give you a lot of opportunities. It'll open a lot of avenues for you to explore. And moving forward, we have genomics and systems biology. So genomics and systems biology is a discipline that's well rooted in biomedical engineering, that devotes to mathematical models and a lot of minor scale and subcellular scale modeling that we do. To give you a more intuitive understanding, imagine a group of molecules actually contributing and assembling to create a molecular structure, which constitutes a lot of cells, and that actually makes up your human body. And this sort of an assembly system that regulates to create an entire human body, right from the stage of fetuses to an evolved human birth. So there's a lot of genomic level mechanisms that happen, and the genomics and system biology enthusiasts have been trying to understand this by creating as many mathematical models as possible that truly reflects what a molecular system is trying to do inside of the body. And the next focus area that has been my core field of expertise for the last 5 years, and most of my research, and I believe most of our research at NIT and at many universities in India like IITs and Usmania, VIT, and there are many colleges in Bombay and Delhi who has been trying to work on it. So this is pretty much about combining mathematics, physics, and biological systems with engineering of new devices and computational algorithms to create new devices and technologies that are data intensive and which has a possibility for analysis to create better solutions for bridging gaps in medical and clinical fields. And moving down the line, immunoengineering, like I said, has been the hot and trending topics for the last few years, especially ever since COVID has badly hit the world. And now that we're going through the pandemic times, immunoengineering actually has the potential to harness the power of immune system to treat diseases such as cancers, viruses. It could promote tissue regeneration, to improve the healing and repair internally. And now that I have the opportunity to interact with a lot of people. In fact, one of my roommates actually work on cancer development. They are trying to use the cancerous cells, the like the T cells and different sorts of cells, to act against cancer while it is within the cancerous tissue. So there's been a lot of research going on, and this is one of the most funded research across the globe, irrespective of the place. And we also have neuroengineering. The main focus of neuroengineering is actually to use engineering tools to modulate central, peripheral, and autonomous nervous system. And it also aims at developing new engineering techniques to, in the medical field for screening, diagnosis, and prognosis, repair, and regeneration. In fact, at Yvonne Medics, for our product pipeline, we rely a lot on neuroengineering techniques. Our devices are categorized into neuroengineering by the Food and Drug Administration. It is a regulating body in the US that ensures the safety and efficacy of a device before it enters the market. And we also have translational cell and tissue engineering, which develops and translates advanced technologies to enhance and restore the function at molecular, cellular, and tissue levels. I think the world has been quite observant on genomics and systems biology, immunotechnology, and translational cell and tissue engineering, because they have huge funds that are coming in. And I have seen many professors with these focus areas pumping in a lot of grants than people who traditionally do instrumentation. And I guess for students who are keen on pursuing masters in the US and Canada, you might not really see a lot of labs working on medical devices, but you see a lot of research that's happening either in the first three domains where you need computation and data sciences, or it will be on to the material sciences and genomics and translational cell and tissue engineering. Moving forward, now that we know, these are the focus areas, the moment you step outside of India, the biggest question that I had and most of my friends did have was, where do we search for opportunities? What kind of opportunities do we have beyond India? What are the countries that we look at? The conventional route to look at for masters and PhD has been the biggest misconception. People usually assume that it's only a few countries in Europe and few countries like USA and Canada that has wide possibilities for biomedical engineering. It is true that they do have great opportunities available for students like us and enthusiasts like us, but there are many countries that were not recognized in this cadre. Let me actually show you how many countries do we have beyond India that has great inputs for biomedical engineering and great resources for you to go and work for them. I know North Korea has been on the word for all the nuclear technologies, but South Korea unfortunately has not been on the spotlight or limelight for a long time now. But South Korea is pioneering in a lot of biomedical research, especially if you want to work on biomems or semiconductor-based devices or optoelectronics. South Korea has been investing millions of US dollars in sort of developing those technologies and contributing it to the US market. And we also have countries like Taiwan, where many of my friends did internship from when they were at NIT. And we have Switzerland, UK, Netherlands, Finland, which is popular for the educational system, but also has an equal share in biomedical technologies. Broadly, you might not hear it in the name of biomedical engineering when you try to look for programs. It could be referred as medical engineering. It could be referred as bioengineering. It could be referred as biotechnology sometimes. So just be keen on to look for these focus areas that we discuss instead of the name of the program. And recently, it got to my attention that many of our seniors, and in fact, I have gotten an admit from the KTH Royal Institute at Sweden, which for most of your information is It's totally tuition free if you apply. So there's a very good university. A few of our seniors have been, a few of my seniors and my juniors have been doing masters there, and I found really good opportunities out there because many multinational companies, for the benefits that the government is catering to them, has established lots of research facilities, which will provide you unique research opportunities for internships or full-time research positions to establish. I would request all the students in the session to be very keen on searching all of these countries and the different programs that they have. And Singapore is one of the closest. I've had the opportunity to present my work that I did at Osmania on EEG, and in fact, I've gotten a couple of internships out of that conference. So the more you expose yourselves to different kinds of research and research facilities that are in those countries, you get to see a lot of opportunities that you didn't know exist. All right. So now that we know different focus areas and where to look for these areas in different countries outside of India, let me actually give you a very specific comparison of how the field is different, how the opportunities are different from within the India and outside of it. Especially in terms of medical device development in India, we have quite a few companies that have their sales and marketing teams, but not a very well established R&D units. For example, Medtronics India has opened their first ever research facility in Mumbai quite recently. And they have been trying to put up their efforts to make it a fully functional research facility for engineers like us to work in there. And I believe in the years to come, there are many more companies that are very keen at establishing their research facilities in India. As of now, the market is only providing these positions, which are predominantly available for biomedical engineers with a bachelor's degree. R&D assistants, who would help them bring the technology and teach all these other engineers who do maintenance and service to about the technology, the protocols that they need to employ. And sometimes these R&D engineers earlier were brought on site to America and different other research facilities in Germany to get trained, and then they go back to India. They train these service engineers and all the technicians to work on the devices they have. Medtronic has a huge spectrum of devices that are already in circulation in India. Johnson and Johnson have many. GE Healthcare is being trying to promote many. Almost all the clinical setting devices, be it the imaging devices or the large scale imaging technologies that we have in India, are Philips Healthcare based, Siemens Healthcare based. So Siemens has a unit called Siemens Health Needs, where they do exclusive, diagnostic and therapeutic devices on lab on chip. So all of these have a great market in India, and the R&D assistants get trained to understand what these devices do, how to control them, how to use them, and they kind of pass it on to the service engineers, application engineers, and sales engineers. But on a general note, in India, you would find most of these jobs either for sales and marketing or just to explain these to the clients that they have for different hospitals. But at a global level, when you step outside of India, you can have a lot of variations in terms of what these positions are called and how extensive they go in terms of narrowing down these positions. To start with, I work as an R&D engineer. I serve as a principal R&D engineer, which is the top of the chain in R&D engineers. And we have medical device engineers who exclusively deal with medical devices and do not work beyond the development of the device. And we have mechanical design engineers who contribute to the mechanical engineer to make proof of concept models, to make appearance models, to do the design control processes, to execute longitudinal studies, especially when it comes to mechanical design for medical devices. And we also have bioelectronics engineers. I think most of us, are categorized as bioelectronics engineer because at NIT Rourkela, if you are going through Kunal sir's lab at MEI lab, you would work with a lot of sensors, different sorts of circuit development. In fact, I did my first circuit development as a part of my traditional lab. And we also have systems engineering, where you develop different sorts of test validation protocols. You kind of test the devices and make sure that the systems are created as per the need of the user, as per the voice of customer research that we have as a feedback. And we have field engineers who go on field, interact with the patients, interact with the experts, interact with specialists to create and to envision the possibilities of different technologies. And the list goes on and on. We have research scientists, we have project engineers, test engineers, systems engineers, and so there are because of the streamlined processes that we have already established in the industry here, because of the huge research possibilities that you have as an engineer in the many countries that we talked about, like Sweden, Germany, USA, Canada, Singapore, South Korea. So you get to work in either of these. It depends. For example, as an instrumentation engineer, if you know bioelectronics and mechanical design, you have a possibility to become an R&D engineer or device engineer or a medical instrumentation engineer. At the same time, if you have good understanding of instrumentation and software interfaces, if you're good at programming, you can also contribute to bioelectronics or R&D engineer in sensor and software development. So it depends on the kind of skills that you would have. But fundamentally, we have many variations in these positions. Now that you know what kind of focus areas we have, what devices are regarded as biomedical engineering devices, what is the contrast that we have within India and outside of India? In India, we have seen that it's been mostly marketing and sales, which I believe would eventually change because the companies are looking India as a bigger market and they're trying to capture Asia as a greater service market. Now that there is a great chip shortage from that's oncoming from China, I think Japan and South Korea are very keen in producing more chip-based devices that all of us require. Be it in terms of the silicon-based semiconductors or be it in terms of silicon-based biomem devices. So I think I suggest all of you, especially whoever is in bachelor's, to use all of your courses. I think NIT Rourkela has a really varied curriculum where you can get a sense of understanding of what you can really do. So recently, one of our NIT students who graduated in 2020 contacted me on LinkedIn asking about the different fields that they could explore to do masters. I think the biggest confusion they have is what kinds of opportunities do have. What do people traditionally do? What countries are good for masters, and where do we do our PhDs? What is the priority? Should we go for a PhD after masters, or should we do should we take the traditional route of doing masters first and then trying to understand the field more before we start the PhDs? Well, in my experience, everything has its own pros and cons. But let me actually give you a quick insight into how different countries have been popularized or populated with international students for masters and PhD. So when we talk about masters and PhD, 90% of the people usually first prefer USA or Canada because of the wide range of opportunities that they believe they'll have once they complete the courses. But although it's been quite astonishing that there are other countries that the world has been looking at, like Singapore and Sweden, which are attracting people to come and research. Because if a country is inviting you to do research, you are actually contributing a lot, for the development of their country, both in terms of taxes and the tuitions that you would pay. I am not sure how open it would be for you to pursue, your career after your master's or a PhD, but in terms of generally going there for higher studies, it's been quite reliant. It's been quite helpful to know that most countries would actually welcome you with open arms because you'll go spend a lot of money. I think US has been very tough for people who completed masters with a lot of regulations that you have to go through. But trust me, it's all worth it because the kind of money that you would make, the kind of research exposure that you would bring on at the current moment in USA and Canada has been quite elite, and I think it's pretty dominant across the entire global markets. Most of the products that you see, although were researched in Germany, the market has been quite fancy when it comes to devices from USA and Canada because of the safety and efficacy standards that they follow. Be it the Food and Drug Administration in US or the National Institute of Health that's acting as a federal agency to fund a lot of research. In fact, at Yvonne Medics, most of our research comes from NIH, and we have a lot of approved FDA products that's going to hit market pretty soon, which I am overseeing right now. So let's see what we have in US and Canada. In particular, US and Canada has a great attention for master students and PhD programs. Many of my friends, we have about seven students I know from my batch 2018 graduated, students from our own biomedical engineering department at NIT. Only two students are actually pursuing PhDs in here, and most of them actually came out here for masters because all of us, including me, felt that we are too naive to actually do a PhD. We are too novice in the field that we don't know a lot of things that we should to assume for a PhD to be already comes down with. But I think that is one of the biggest lies and misconception, I would say. The people who opted for PhDs are doing extremely well. They have been contributing to the research. I think when I wanted to go to masters, like Dr. Kunal Paul said, I've been trying to interact with Professor Sirisendu Ray, Mr. Indranil Banerjee, Dr. Thirugnanam, and a lot of other professors in my department. Of course, not to forget Dr. Mukesh Gupta, and a lot of others to identify and know which fields of engineering would actually do a lot of justice to my profile if I continue to do my career in biomedical engineering. I think most of them have suggested that I actually do some sort of research instead of the traditional course-based work and getting into the industry. But I think perspectives do change when you go to masters or a PhD. The way you assume things, the way you perceive the world would totally be different. I have realized that being on the academic front for 5 6 years, contributing into research in terms of my own projects and the work I've done, under the supervision of Dr. Kunal Pal, the work I've done with the labs that we have as a part of curriculum, my internships, the research publications I've made, all of them actually told me that I should try and see what how is it different in a commercial setting. I've been working in academic setting, but fortunately, now that I work for a company that's very research oriented, I lead the research and development in the company. I have a lot of engineers that work for me. We have a lot of research assistants and PhDs who work for me. I know in hierarchy, PhDs comes much above than a master's, but there is one skill that I would like to underline, and I'd request and urge all the students, especially watching this session from NITs and other local colleges in India. Beyond the technical excellence that you assume as the great contribution to your profile, people are very keen on how good you are at communication and leadership. Trust me, with my ability to communicate the insights, I have competed with 13 PhDs in the interview process, and I was able to make it on the top of all of them. And in fact, quite recently, I made the head of product development, and now many PhDs would come work for me. I am sure that in terms of technical exposure and understanding, a PhD would present a lot of new perspectives than I could. But in terms of governing the whole project and communicating my, research inputs, and in terms of leading the team, I have far more experience, and I would attribute all of this to my experiences with Hourglass, Toastmasters International, and sort of doing different activities for the department, and leading and being proactive in terms of developing and curbing my communication abilities. So if you are a person who is outspoken already, who has good ability to communicate your insights, I would recommend you, take a step forward, organize different events for the department, be proactive in terms of giving talks outside, be it to the small universities, be it to schools, be it to whichever possible facilities that you could. And if you are a person who is still having glossophobia, the fear of public speaking, I think I know I myself was one. I was introverted when I began, but now I am very convenient and comfortable when I have to express myself. And all of this has been eventually turned out from my clubs. I would say from Art Glass, and I'm sure there are a lot of other clubs in on the campus that must have taken place. Many students to greater heights with developing their social skills, their interaction abilities. So that is something that all of you need to carefully look at. And getting back to the graduates program, now that we have seen that most of the students actually come with masters and PhD here, usually prefer because they get really paid. And trust me, although the world is very keen on paying a buckload of money for software engineers, the machine learning experts and data science people, for say like the computer vision experts, biomedical engineers are being paid extremely well. I have friends in the field who are earning, although not more than the people, but equally competent in terms of salaries and pay cycles. It's hard to say how much, but the ranges have been quite convincing and quite satisfying. I think from the first offer I received to the offer I've accepted at Yvonne Medics, so the pay was almost double. So it depends on the kind of opportunity that you go through, and bring more viruses to hit on the world, and the world is going to suffer. Everybody is going to look at human health and healthcare, and the first thing even the clinician has to rely on is a biomedical engineer. And as long as that happens, we have a business and we have lots of opportunities coming in. So do not give it up. If somebody has a feeling that you are a novice, trust me, your circuit development skills are good enough to get you a 100K job in US. And it's no Berlin, in University of Berlin. And now she has come here for a PhD. So that's what most people do. They go for research assistantships in different labs in Sweden, Singapore, Germany, Australia, and all those countries. And they academia. I'm not sure how many of you know. Actually, I think Dr. Pal here did his postdoc in USA and Canada, in Canada, I guess. So there are a lot of opportunities for you to do, even if you do your master's and PhD in India. And if you plan to do these degrees in USA or Canada, there are endless possibilities, endless opportunities you can always take. One advantage as a biomedical engineer all of us has is it's a multidisciplinary field. So you can always take a detour to some other field of engineering. I know friends who worked all their life in instrumentation and currently working. My own friend who has been co-author in most of my publication has been algorithm development for PET scanners in New York. So he has never done algorithm development prior to his master's in the US. So you have possibility to change your field of expertise, change your field of interest at any given point, and that's only possible for fields like biomedical engineering, chemical engineering, and biotechnology. Like I said, for people who are very keen in masters and PhD, do not restrict yourselves or limit yourselves to US and Canada. Please be open to other countries and try to find the research opportunities. Always go with the research funds. So one question that I can probably answer for many people who are still searching for masters is always finds lab that have really good incoming funds. If the lab does not have good funds, they're not going to pay you. They're not going to, of course, paying is out of question. They're not going to support your research as much as you would want to try a freehand research at a lab. And also, what do people do when they do academic research or they get to industries? 95% of the times, all these people that I know have done their masters and worked as research assistants actually came for a PhD to US or Canada. This is a very stereotypic consideration that I'd make because this is out of my experience, but there are people still working there in the industry and being successful. I think this is all I thought I would share, but as Dr. Pal has requested, and most of you has mentioned to me on LinkedIn and various other social forums, let's make this question, session a question and answer session for now. And I request all of you to be pretty active in terms of this session, because this is gonna give you the most out of this conversation today. So please hit it up if you have any questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Vamsi. And now the rest of the participants can ask some questions as the speaker is inviting for the questions. And whoever wanted to ask a question, please switch on your camera and then you can ask the question.
And just for your convenience, if somebody has a problem asking questions, feel free to just drop a message to me on the chat. I could answer them as well. I think Abhijit Govind wanted to ask a question, so please go ahead, man.
Yes, sir. So you've done your master's in one of the world's most prestigious universities. So according to you, what do you think is the qualities or the criterion required for an Indian student
Okay, so the general misconception that people have for universities like Johns Hopkins, Harvard, and Stanford is that um, they believe that
US.
their profile is too low or their profile capability is too low to get an admit in those. But the reality is different. My GRE scores were far less than most of my friends who's been doing their masters in state universities. I do not tell them that I'm desperate enough to prove my character in research. And of course, the research attributes that I have in terms of publications. I have a book chapter in Dr. Kunal Pal's book on bioelectronics and medical devices in Elsevier. And I also have a couple of publications prior to that based on my work at Osmania during my research internship. So the two things that any university would look at is a good story from you. It could be a fabricated one. It could be the one that they would sit and read to. Imagine Hopkins would receive at least 1,200 applications annually for just 20 to 30 positions in masters, and the leadership panel has to go through all of that to give away 30 application or like offers to those students. So if they need to, you need to get their attention. Like you need to make a very interesting story. The story I told them was, in my fifth standard, I was bedridden on hospital for 13 days without a single water droplet touching my tongue because I had serious intestinal infection. So I told them that there was no accessible biomedical devices at that times, and I had to suffer, and that has been a trauma in my life. And now, even in the third tier countries, now we are talking about computer-aided surgeries in America, but in India, still it's the same case. We don't have accessible drive for medical devices. So I told them that I wanted to learn more about biomedical engineering as a researcher and do some extensive research in medical device development and come back to my country and contribute, which of course is a lie because I'm still in the US. But it's all about how you will tell your story. You're going to narrate your story in a way that they would sit and listen. And you should definitely kind of polish the way you tell your story. And I think I would try to steal one of Dr. Kunal Pal's idea. And I'm sure I've been mentioning a lot about him because I idealized him when I was NIT. He was my mentor, he was my guide. So he told me when I was writing my research paper, he gave me a beautiful suggestion. So when you start writing anything, whether it's an article, research based, or your personal statement of purposes for your university admissions, always take a big chart paper, try to write your timeline. From in my case, I started my engineering at 2014 and I graduated from NIT at 2018, and I have a year gap after that before Hopkins. So I sat down, I wrote all of those timelines. I did every single contribution that I made as a student, whether academic or extracurricular, in the timeline. And then I started writing my story. So SOPs and the letters of recommendation that you would have, that you would provide to the universities, are actually the real reason you would get an admit. And but now a smart advice to people looking for internship opportunities is, since the world is moving to remote based exercising for most of the work. I think most of my friends are working remote. In fact, I am working remote. I talk to my contract manufacturers who work under me. I talk to the engineers who work under me. All of that happens just from my home, like you see on the same screen. So the possibility for you getting a research internship on signal processing, data science based researches, and all of that can happen right from India. Earlier, the case was you go to different universities. There's a lot of hassle, visa processes that you need to go through, a lot of submissions of documents and all of that. But now you can just connect with a professor who is working in the US on some signal processing research. You can contribute to them, and that can be a great block on your profile. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, any more questions? Yeah. Any more questions are invited, please. The audience, you can ask the questions. Aman, do you have any questions or anyone?
Okay, I think let's make this a little interesting. Why don't I know this sounds more like a lecture and me sounding like a professor, but can I have everybody turning on their videos? I think that will probably open a lot of people. And please unmute yourself so that we can usually interact. I'm sure there are a lot of professors on the call too. Like, what kind of considerations do you want to make to biomedical engineering? If you have any questions about the curriculum, I can answer those as well because I think I know how many times I have bugged and like barged into Dr. Kunal Pal's office and Dr. Mukesh Gupta's office to change our curriculum. I was requesting them because I am an instrumentation enthusiast, so I've been really bugging them to put a lot of courses based on digital instrumentation and all of that. So I'd appreciate if all of you can turn on your videos for a second. And in fact, I want to take a screenshot to put this on LinkedIn with all of your permission. So as much as possible, please do turn on your videos. And I'd like to see a lot of faces that I could capture on screen.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes, please, everyone. Please turn on your cameras, please.
Okay, that's quite good. Do we have any final year students who are trying to, sort of apply for masters or have gotten admits from any universities in US who might have questions about visas and other stuff? I think somebody's trying to talk, but you're muted, I guess. You need to unmute yourself. Well, Dil, if there are no more questions,
yeah,
I think
if you are not able to, if your mic is not working, you can please type it on the chat box if anyone is having questions, or else we can end up the session. Okay, I feel there are no questions more. Okay, Asta, can you please present a vote of thanks for our speaker?
Yes, sir. Sure.
Thank
you. On behalf of Department of Biotechnology and Medical Engineering, NIT Rourkela, I would like to extend a vote of thanks to Mr. Vamsi Reddy for taking out time from his packed schedule to share his insights on avenues and options of biomedical education abroad. We are all immensely grateful to you, sir, for offering us this panoramic view of opportunities that lie ahead. I would also like to thank HOD sir and all of our faculties for organizing this talk session for us. And finally, to all my fellow students for being inquisitive and yet patient enough to soak and seek facts, tips, and knowledge so shared and being with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Asta. It's been a pleasure interacting with all of you and trying to share a few insights that I have for biomedical engineering. But before I end up, I want to thank a few people for making this happen. I think firstly, I'd like to start with Abhijit Govind because he's one of the first people who reached out to me for a session, and I think it's his effort that made it possible. And I'd like to thank Professor Bala for coordinating with me and making it seamless for me to make it out for the session. And of course, my favorite and almost all of our batch's favorite and the dear HOD, the Dr. Kunal Pal, who's been a great support in my journey. And as seniors, we might not really contribute to your development at various stages, but as much as possible, please try to reach out to me or any other seniors that you would want a suggestion from. And my LinkedIn is available. It reads as Vamsi Reddy. You'll be able to find it with Yvonne Medics. If you have any questions, please feel free to redirect to my email. It goes vamsi.biomedical@gmail.com. I would be open for a session. In fact, I am hoping to cater at least 15 minutes a week, to kind of talk to different people who might have questions about masters and other stuff. I'd probably send out an email soon to Dr. Pal about this. And in fact, I'm trying to gather about a few other students in my batch to help you guys out for the questions that you might have about masters, about pursuing your internships in abroad, about other research opportunities that are prevailing in other countries. But seamlessly and ultimately, I want all of you and all of us to create a difference in the lives of people by contribute to biomedical engineering as much as possible, and that makes it unique and special, both in terms of money, recognition, spotlight, and reward. Thank you all for paying attention to a long conversation like this, and I had great pleasure in talking to all of you. Thank you and have a nice day.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thank you,
much, sir,
Vamsi.
for your kind words.
Thank you.
Yeah, one more request for the students. I have floated the feedback form. Have some patience and please fill the feedback form. It would be more encouraging for the speakers. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you so much, Vamsi, and thank you everyone.